Okay, so I know some people are still jumping on, but I know that everybody has probably a tight schedule. So we'll go ahead and get started, and then we can always share the recording too for anyone that um, is a little bit late. So thank you guys for joining. My name is Courtney, and then we also have Melissa that will be presenting as well. And we work at Resolve. We help and specialize in placing physicians who need a J-1 waiver job. So um, I like to disclose that we are not immigration attorneys, but we do help with J-1 waiver job searches all the time. So we, place a ton of people every year and have an excellent immigration attorney we consult with. So what we try to do is just provide the information and dissect the information in a way that is most helpful to you. Because if you just were to go online and Google it, there's tons of information that isn't really relevant to how you go about starting your search. So that's really where we come in and want to give some insight on how to effectively do a J-1 waiver job search. So that's the purpose of this discussion today. Um, we will be talking about how to get started, the job search itself, finding J-1 eligible jobs, and then Melissa will talk about the different waiver types. So mostly we'll be focusing on the Conrad 30 program, just because that's probably the most popular. That's what most people are going in as whenever they're finding a J-1 waiver job. But there are certainly other options if you miss a deadline or the timeline doesn't match up, or if you're primary care. So we'll talk about other options as well, and then she'll discuss processing timelines too. So just to start, um, as far as starting the process of your job search, it's really important that you start at least 18 to 24 months from your graduation date. So if you haven't started the job search yet, now is absolutely the time to get started. The 2022 cycle opens in September and October. So every state has different guidelines, different open dates, different deadlines. Some states don't have deadlines, but as a general rule, the best way to set yourself up for success in this job search is going to be starting the process early, and that's in relation to any state. And these open dates, again, I always like to read, are not deadlines. So that's the first date that you can actually submit your application to the state. To submit your application to the state, you obviously need to have a signed contract with an employer. And generally, if you can have your contract signed by the summer, late summer, like early August, September, that's really ideal, because there is a window after you get your job, sign your contract. There's like a 30 to 40 day window before you can actually submit your application, because your immigration attorney is going to want some time to process that application, and most will want at least a 30-day window. So step one is starting the interview process now, getting contracts, signing a contract. After you sign, the contract goes to your immigration attorney, and then your immigration attorney typically will submit the contract to the state. So that's kind of the way it works. And if you can have that, again, contract signed by the summer or early August, September, that's going to give you enough time to hopefully have it ready to go by that first open date in October. So that's when most of the country opens. What is Conrad 30? You guys probably are familiar with it, but really Conrad 30 was created to fill the primary care shortage in the US. And so by default, because of that, a lot of states give priority to primary care physicians. So if you're a specialist and you're on this webinar, just know that they also give spots to specialists, but it is a lot easier to get a J-1 waiver job if you are a primary care doctor. As of now, the only state that still does not allow specialists is going to be California. So if you have any fellowship training, you wouldn't be able to get into the state of California based on their guidelines now. We keep hoping they're going to change that, but for now, that's still the case. So, um, starting the job search. So the main thing, as I already touched on, is starting early. So that's the single best thing I can tell you is if you haven't started, start now. Um, as you go through this process, you have a couple more hurdles in place than a normal U.S. citizen has. So the first hurdle is that you have to start super early, and the problem with that is a lot of times you're not going to see a lot of J-1 eligible 2022 jobs posted online. And so with limited job postings, it can kind of leave you wondering how to even go about finding jobs. In addition to that, not every job is J-1 eligible. So only certain employers can support a waiver position. And so that has to be a medically underserved location. I put the HRSA.gov site here because that allows you to go in and actually search an address for whatever employer you're interviewing at, just to confirm that they are eligible to support your waiver. And all you'll need to look for is that that employer is deemed medically underserved. One thing to know about that is just because you have to work in a medically underserved area, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in the middle of nowhere. So, obviously, again, Conrad 30 was kind of created to fill the rural primary care shortage needs, but we place people all the time in larger cities and metro areas too. So just know that there are eligible employers in more ideal locations. Those are just a little bit more difficult to find. And so that's another possibility. The other thing is just practice type eligibility. So the one thing is a lot of private groups aren't going to be as J-1 friendly, we would say. Most of the time you're going to be looking at a hospital situation. One thing to know is that academics do give waivers. So a lot of times people come to us and think that they can't do academics because they need a waiver, but that's not true. So you can work in academics, hospital settings. You can work in private groups. It's just they probably aren't as used to going through the J-1 process, so it can get a little, tricky. These bigger organizations obviously do this all the time, and so they're just a little bit more well-versed and will provide you the support. So the other thing is just kind of a tip as you're going through this process and starting, since a lot of these jobs aren't going to be posted online, a lot of the effort you're going to want to put in is actually cold contacting institutions. So relying on, chiefs and chairs, your mentors that you currently have, and actually reaching out to these organizations directly to inquire about jobs is probably the single best thing you can do. There certainly will be job postings out there, but the thing with job postings is just understanding that not every job posted is J-1 eligible. Some sites are good about putting that in the posting that it is J-1 eligible. Other sites don't even reference it. So that's another kind of hurdle as you go through the process. You could apply to 20 jobs online and maybe get 15 responses saying, hey, we don't actually take or support J-1 waivers. So the networking and cold contacts is a good alternative to do it, just in addition, not an alternative, in addition to applying online as well. And then I kind of already touched on job boards. So those are kind of the best tips we have for starting the process early. Again, networking, cold contacts, trying to sign a contract by early August or September. Just know if you don't have a contract signed by then, it's not a reason to freak out or worry. People sign contracts in October, November, December, and still are able to get waivers approved. It's just when you look at this map, your your chances of success go up and give you more options the earlier you sign. So this is our map that we provide to our clients to let them know kind of the status of all of the states. And so you can see every state has 30 spots that they can provide, and that's for all primary care specialists. It's 30 spots total. And so the states in red are the states for the 2021 cycle that have already closed and filled. And most of these states that are in red have actually been closed since December. So that's just one thing to know. You know, if you don't have a contract signed, for instance, in Texas, they close usually within the first couple weeks of September. So, you know, Texas is no longer an option, or those northeastern states typically close and fill within the first 3 months, so October to November, December. And several states will just fill once they get 30 applications. They don't actually have a deadline. So as I kind of touched on, each state guideline is different. So there's not like one general rule to say, hey, you know, this is the deadline for all states. It all varies. And some states, like I mentioned, don't have deadlines. So the states in blue, you'll see, you know, have plenty of spots still available. The states in red are the ones that are full or enclosed or close to being closed. So if you guys have questions about this map or states in particular, you can put it in the chat. I know this is kind of probably overwhelming. So if you do have specific questions, just put it in the chat and we'll try to answer that as well. And I will let Melissa talk about different waiver types.
Hi, everyone. Court, I was trying to turn my video back on, but I think maybe you have to do it. So that's okay. I'll just talk. Yeah, so the different waiver types, I'll let Court go to that next screen that pops up here. So we always like to talk about your other waiver options because there are some out there. Conrad 30 by far is the most common and widely known, but there are some other options out there for you. The nice thing about these alternative waivers are probably the biggest thing is that they don't have any deadlines, so that is nice. And so the first one that we talk about is HHS waiver, and this is really for primary care only. If you go into the guidelines, it says that you can't have more than 1 year of fellowship training to be eligible for an HHS waiver. So it's really only for primary care physicians, but that is an option. Another option is DRA, which stands for Delta Regional Authority, and it is open to primary care and specialists. DRA, it's only 8 states, and it's only specific counties within those states. And so it's there's very specific guidelines there too. And all of these things, if you were to Google them, they've all got a website online that you could go to for more details. ARC is another option, and it's similar to Delta Regional in the aspect that it is only 13 states, and then it's 400 counties within those 13 states. And so they're also open to primary care and specialists. And besides having no deadlines on all of these, there's also no cap. So these programs, can ideally accept as many applications as they needed to or as they received. An O1 waiver, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of that before, but it's it's primary care or specialist, but probably going to be more specialized because that's part of the criteria that goes into the waiver is that it's a physician that really demonstrates, like, as they say in the guidelines, extraordinary capabilities. And so we've worked with a lot of clients that are subspecialized and tend to have a lot of research, publications, presentations, a lot of different criteria that go into that O1 waiver. One thing that I will say about the O1 waiver in regards to your J-1, like 3-year requirement, is that it doesn't take the place of that. So an O1 waiver you might be able to do if you were, let's say in a crunch, like let's say you were a 2021 graduate and you came to us for help right now with job search, if you were O1 eligible, that might be a quicker fix for you for next year. And then the following year, you could just, look for a J-1 waiver job. So it doesn't fulfill that 3-year requirement that you need. The Canadian exception, we put this on here because we actually, we work with lots of Canadian citizens. And so kind of along the same lines of like O1, it's not filling that waiver requirement, but if you are a Canadian citizen, you could work for a year on an H1. And so again, as we're working with our Canadian citizen clients, we always let them know this. Let's say they weren't late in their search. Let's say they were, maybe earlier in their search or earlier in the fiscal year, like let's say the fall, they had come to us. And some of these states fill within the first 30 days of opening for the Conrad program. And so some of them fill very quickly. So let's say, for example, you came to us and you really wanted to be in Florida. Florida is a very popular state. Let's say Florida had already filled at that time. That might be something if you are a Canadian citizen and you just say, hey, I have to be in Florida. My husband lives there. My family's there. I have to be in Florida. Then that might be an option to where you could do an H1 for that year and then maybe possibly, secure a job via the Conrad program for the following year and get into Florida, time wise. So O1 and H1 are just kind of some other options that could potentially work for you in different scenarios. The last one that we'll mention is the Veteran Affairs, the VA hospitals. Those are also open to primary care and specialists. And the Veterans Affair, it's its own program. There's no caps on that. One thing I will say with the Veterans Affairs, typically when we're reaching out to those employers for our clients, we get a lot of response back that they typically don't consider visa candidates until at least 6 months prior to graduation. So I know it's definitely possible in speaking with immigration attorneys, but from our standpoint, I think just because we typically are working with clients that are searching way ahead of time. Sometimes it just doesn't work out because they're going to consider those U.S. citizen candidates before they will the visa candidates. So those are some of the waiver options. And I see you guys are chatting some questions. We'll answer those here after I get through these next few slides. We'll go into some of those questions for you. Processing time. So obviously very important to talk about processing time. I know Courtney hit on starting your job search early. We can't stress that enough. So, and kind of looking at this approval timeline, this is talking about from the moment you sign your contract. So we have there, start your job search. Just your job search alone could take 5 to 7 months, depending on, your specialty, what areas of the country that you're searching in. There's lots of factors there, but from the moment you sign a contract, typically, once you sign your contract, the employer that you sign with is going to 9 times out of 10 provide you with an immigration attorney. And so what we have heard in speaking with immigration attorneys, again, we don't have one in-house here, but we talk with a few on a large scale that give us a lot of good information. And so typically that immigration attorney will want at least like 30 days to prepare your waiver application. And so, for 2022, if you signed a contract in August, and then you've got that whole month to prepare the waiver paperwork. That's setting you up really well time-wise. So some immigration attorneys might take a little bit longer, some might take less. So it really kind of varies in that aspect. But once you submit your waiver application to the Department of Health, typically the Department of Health are fairly quickly at trying to review those applications for you. We have anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks there. However, there's always an asterisk. However, um, there are a few states that are take much longer. For example, New York and Massachusetts are 2 states that I always talk about with clients because no matter when you submit those applications and when their deadlines are, they typically aren't, those 2 states are not going to let you know if your waiver is recommended or not until March. So if you are a physician that is interested in New York and Massachusetts, definitely keep that in mind. Again, maybe you have family there, maybe you have to be there. I totally understand that. It's just, you want to keep that in mind because it's a very late notification. So, anyways, those timelines vary, just like Courtney was saying with some of the other stuff. It's not one answer for every state. Unfortunately, they all have different guidelines, and so once you get your recommendation from the Department of Health, it is very unlikely that it's going to be denied at the state and USCIS level. So that's a good thing. However, the processing time for those two can also be anywhere from 2 to 6 months. So we've got anywhere from 2 to 3 months at the state level there, and then USCIS anywhere from 2 to 4 months. So that's why we say start your job search now, is because all of that time frame, it can be very lengthy. And actually, I was just speaking with an immigration attorney recently, and she said one of the biggest hangups this year has been at that Department of State review level. And in some instances, it's taking anywhere from 4 to 6 months just at the state review level. So hopefully it will, hopefully, obviously this year has been very unique for many reasons. And so hopefully next year it'll be more along this timeline. But I know this year, it has been even more lengthy, I guess. So I think that is, we've got some information on here for you, an email if you, don't feel comfortable asking questions live or in the chat. Feel free to email us, of course. And we did record this webinar. I think I answered that. That was one of the first questions that we got. So we're happy to email it out whenever we get finished here too. Court, I'll pull up this chat, the questions that we're getting, and we can kind of answer those live if you want.
Yeah. Anyone that has questions, just put it in the chat and we'll answer them. On the first one, if I'm planning to do a 1-year fellowship before the waiver, does that mean I should start looking for a job before I actually start fellowship? Potentially, yes. So if you are now going into a 1-year fellowship, meaning that you will be graduating in 2023 instead of 2022, you would want to ideally start the search like while you're in your final year, your first year of fellowship. So Melissa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for a 2023 search, you would want to sign a contract by like summer of 2022, meaning you should start your job search next year, like January through May would be the ideal months to kind of start looking in 2022.
Yep. That sounds right to me. Yes.
Okay. And then Melissa already answered the California question. So I know I mentioned that California is the only state that typically doesn't take specialists. So correction, they do allow specialists, as Melissa mentioned in the chat, but it doesn't open up to specialists until July. So again, all states open October. or most states open October. And then California wouldn't open to a specialist until July, so the following July, meaning that like everyone should have a job secured by then, right? So that's why we say they don't typically take specialists. It's just that they usually fill with primary care prior to even being open to specialists would be the correct answer. So I apologize for that. They do, but they don't really ever get to a point where they have them. This year, if you look at the map, you can see that they, for the first year, and all the years I've been here have not filled. So that's never happened where they only have 14 applications. So this would be a year that they probably could fill with some specialist due to that, due to still being open. So.
Yeah, I can take that next question if you want, Cora. It's are there hospitalist waivers as well? So that's one other thing to hit on with California and just all states actually. So some states consider a hospitalist a specialist. Actually, probably the majority of states, a huge chunk of states consider a hospitalist a specialty. And a hospitalist could actually go to California, though. California does not consider a hospitalist a specialty. So I'm not sure what specialty you were referring to earlier that was able to get into there. But hospitalist waivers, yeah, it's just like it's included in the 30 cap. And again, we would have to look at each state, go state by state to tell you whether they would consider it a specialty waiver or primary care waiver. That's something we could always help answer in more of a one-on-one type of situation or call.
Yeah, to echo what she said, though, I will say, if you are primary care wanting to apply as a hospitalist, just know that you will yield probably 5 times the results as a primary care doc than you would as a hospitalist applicant. So hospitalist has become randomly pretty difficult to find. And just keep in mind that since most states give priority to primary care, if you get to a point in your search where you feel like you're struggling and you really need to be in a state, switching your search and applying as a primary care physician will yield you much, much higher results. So that's just kind of a side note.
Yeah. Can you have Conrad 30 applications submitted simultaneously in 2 different states? No, unfortunately you cannot. Yeah. Are there mainly primary care, or are there mainly primary care positions? So I think this probably goes into what Courtney was, I think she had hit on it in the very beginning, that, the Conrad 30 program was designed for primary care, but every state has a, specialist that they'll take within those 30 spots too. So some of the numbers are actually really high in the number of specialists that they take versus primary care. So that isn't, we can't give you a straightforward answer as to, what they will take this following, next year for 2022 cycle. But we could always look at like historical data. We try to keep track of that. Like you might say, what did Kansas accept last year, primary care versus specialists? And we might be able to tell you that. There are a couple of states that actually do have a cap on the number of specialists they'll take though. So like Washington State, for example, says they only allow 10 specialists. However, if there are still spots open as of April 1st, then they will accept more specialist applications. Another state I can think of that caps that is North Carolina. They say that they only allow 10 specialists, but most of these states that have that cap, they might put you on a waiting list to where you might be considered way later on in the year. Of course, that's, risky waiting until March or April to try to move forward with your waiver application, given the timeline. So hopefully that answered that question.
I'll let you answer the next one too on the alternative waiver types.
With the alternative waiver types, does the job still have to be in an underserved area? So yes, with the DRA and ARC, yes, those are the DRA and ARC counties are going to be pretty rural areas most likely, and they'll have to be medically underserved. And O1 does not. O1 does not. A veterans VA hospital does not. And then the HHS, it actually changed this year to where now their guidelines say that any facility, so any employer, academic, hospital, any employer, um, can apply for an HHS waiver if they have an HPSA score of at least 7. And so where can you find that information? That HRSA.gov website that Courtney had in this presentation somewhere. You can always go out there to HRSA.gov, and there's a spot where you can type in the employer's physical address, and it's going to give you all of those results and tell you what the HPSA score is. Unfortunately, some employers, you might have to educate them a little bit on this. I always tell my clients that as we're reaching out to employers, sometimes you kind of feel like you're doing the educating in some aspects. They might have supported a Conrad waiver in the past, but maybe they've never done an HHS and they're eligible for it. So that's something you can always look up on your own and then educate that employer on too if needed. So. Have you successfully placed physicians in VA hospitals for their J-1 waiver? How difficult or easy is this in the process? Courtney, I don't know if we have any particular tracking on that. I honestly, I've been with Resolve, it'll be 8 years in November. And like I said, we always start looking for our J-1 clients so early that I think that's why we don't see a ton of leads for the VA hospitals. Would that be fair to say, Courtney?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've placed one, but there's not a lot of guidance we can offer because you have to fill out the application yourself. We can't really assist with that. But yeah, it is just you can't apply until really pretty late, and so most of our clients are securing jobs before that 6 months prior, so it would be kind of a backup. I do know that it is a lengthy process, so nothing with the government is really that swift, so it can be a lengthy process, but I don't think that it's super difficult. They do some things a little unique, like I know the one client we had, Melissa, didn't get a contract initially, so they wanted to approve the VA waiver before they would actually hand them a contract. So that's not the norm with any of these waivers. So they do things a little differently. So I don't think it's any more difficult. It's just a little bit of a unique process.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then Heidi, this was a follow-up. So if you are finishing your graduation in 2024, again, you would want to just do 1 year prior. So you would want to start your search 2023, like January through June would be the ideal months to start searching of 2023 for a 2024 grad.
When can we back out on the timeline? Let's say I choose to do more training on a J-1 extension after submitting a contract. So that is probably more of a legal question that you'd want to speak with an attorney on. Anytime you, sign a contract with an employer, and especially if that employer starts all of the J-1 waiver application paperwork, there's pretty significant fees and processing time that go into all of that. And so you very well might be obligated to pay some of that back to the attorney if you decided not to move forward. Courtney might be able to elaborate on that a little bit more too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can obviously back out at any point, but like Melissa said, there are definitely going to be fees that you'll have to pay back. And the J-1 waiver fees can range from anywhere from 10 to 15,000 to 20,000, depending on the attorney you use. So, and they can also have you repay like any cost for travel and getting to the interview, really anything. So definitely not ideal to back out after the fact, but it is possible.
Which states are a lottery system? I believe the only two states that are on a lottery system would be Florida and Connecticut. And for those of you that might not know what that means exactly, so Florida, for example, so they open typically like the first working business Monday of October. So like last year, they were open October 5th until the 16th. They're typically only open for 2 weeks. And within that 2-week time frame, they usually get close to 60 applications, almost double of what they can take. And so if that happens, if a state gets, if they get 30 plus applications, then they say they go into this lottery system to where it's, kind of just a luck of the draw, I guess you would say. There's no, priority given to one person over another. So most states do not do things like that, but Florida does. And then I believe Connecticut has also done that.
Yeah, most states are going to approve you based on timing. So the date the application was received. Some of them are first come, first served. So again, that's why it's important to get your application there if you can, day one. Some states are going to give priority to different specialties, and some states will give priority to essentially the more underserved locations. So the employers with the highest HPSA score or the most underserved. So like if you get a job in Dallas and Texas has 50 applicants, you might get prioritized behind somebody that's in rural Texas. So again, those are the way the state approves is different in every state too. So I wish there were one general rule, but that's not the case.
Yeah. Does this also apply to getting U.S. match as physician?
So I guess I don't understand the question there. So the J-1 waiver process is for anyone needing to find a job. So this wouldn't be pertaining to anything to do with the match. This would be like for your first job.
How much time leeway do you have if the application process takes several months and extends past your J-1 job, i.e. residency or fellowship ends? Can you stay in the country during that time? Good question. So the guidelines say that once you finish residency or fellowship, you have 30 days to stay in the country. There are a few exceptions. Let's say if you were to get a J-1, I think someone mentioned a J-1 extension earlier. You can get a J-1 extension, as far as I know, for taking your boards. And so depending on when your boards are, you might be able to get a J-1 extension and stay in the country in those regards. I don't know if you had anything else to add, Court.
Sorry, I was muted. No.
Let's see here. I live in Massachusetts. I'm aware of this state taking a lot of time to give the answer whether your waiver has been approved or not. Just to double check, other states take 2 to 6 weeks. So that's a rough estimate. Every state is different. 2 to 6 weeks would actually be pretty quick. There's some states that might take closer to 8 to 12 weeks. It really just kind of varies. We just always really want to hit on New York and Massachusetts because those are the two that just flat out say, we don't have to let you know whether this is recommended or not until March. I've spoken with, I speak with the Department of Health in every state every year quite often. And I have asked them why it's like that before. And I don't really feel like nobody's given me a great answer for it. It's just their timeline. It's just their process and how they do it. New York has told me that they try to let you know earlier than March. Massachusetts, they just say March. So yeah, it really varies, but a lot of other states are quicker. Like Courtney and I kind of talked about Florida being open just the first 2 weeks of October. I would estimate that if you submit a waiver in Florida, you're probably going to know whether it's recommended or not by I would say probably early November. Like they're probably going to try to get back to you pretty quickly.
So we have a lot of questions and I don't want to take up everyone's time. So I'm going to try to get through some of these quicker questions. Is psychiatry considered primary care? Yes. And some states actually give priority to psychiatry. Primary care would be internal med, family med, psychiatry, OBGYN, and
Pediatrics.
I'm forgetting one.
Peds.
Oh, pediatrics.
Mm-hmm.
And then for, I think Melissa, you had touched on this for 2021 graduates. Is there a delay anticipated from the Department of State?
As far as I know from the immigration attorney that I have spoken to recently, yes, she has said that it's taking versus maybe 2 to 4 months. It's taking closer to 4 to 6 months in some instances. I would say chat with your immigration attorney more on that, though. They should be able to, have those answers from the state for you.
And then the next one was, does the job have to be in either an MUA or HPSA or both? Melissa, you can answer that.
For the Conrad 30 waiver. So it could be either. So it depends on if you're a specialist or primary care physician. But you really it's kind of a case by case scenario. So besides being located in MUA or HPSA, almost every state has what we call flex waivers, which I would say, just for time's sake, go out and do a little bit more research on that for the particular state you're searching in. But for flex waivers, you actually do not have to be located in either. And so, I would say just go out and do a little bit more research on that. A flex waiver really just says that it's not an MUA or HPSA area, but it serves residents in underserved areas. So you might still have a chance of getting a job in an area that's not MUA or HPSA on the Conrad waiver. Sorry, that's probably kind of confusing.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, I know.
The next one was, I'm looking to apply in Alabama. Is DRA feasible? Are there good acceptance rates? Alabama actually would be fine even for a Conrad 30 spot. They don't typically fill super early. So you can see that they're still open even for Conrad. And Conrad would give you more flexibility than DRA because DRA is going to be, again, super rural and specific to certain counties. So my recommendation would be trying to find a Conrad 30 position there first, just to give you more options.
Yeah, and we don't really keep track of acceptance rates, but if you go out to the DRA and ARC websites, I believe I've seen before where they will actually disclose where they gave their DRA waivers the year prior. So you might see if that's online.
The next one was, what are the common reasons that the state can reject an application? Various reasons, but the most common is that a state gets more than 30, and they would reject you based on just timing. I mean, if your paperwork isn't filled out correctly. Melissa, do you have any others?
No, just, yeah, those two are probably the main one. If state gets 45 applications, the specialist might not have as good odds, but yeah, those are the main reasons.
Okay. The next one was, any brief info statements you can make regarding generalist, radiologist. Do you have anything to add there, Melissa?
I mean, we've worked with a lot of radiologists clients. It's really kind of hard to give a brief info or statement in general, because every client, every physician is so different. There's so many different factors that go into your search, depending on your training, what area of the country you're searching in, timeline. So that would probably warrant maybe a more one-on-one chat.
Okay, I'm just going to answer a few more because there are a lot. Melissa, if you want to type back some answers to people, we can do that too. And then we can also send you guys, if you want to have a more like customized call with one of our team members, we can send you, we can put the calendar to our representatives in this chat too. And that way you could book a time to chat with them and talk about your specific case, and get some more insight as well. So we'll do that. The waiver spots, are they given to first come, first serve? It depends on the different specialty need the state has. Every state is different. So some are first come, first serve, some are lottery. That all just depends on the state. Are there J-1 employers for specialty in Missouri, St. Louis County area? Is there a cap? I don't believe Missouri has a cap on specialists, do they, Melissa?
Not that I am aware of. No,
Yeah,
the note I have for Missouri is that they have no flex waiver.
Yeah, and they will take specialists. We've placed plenty of people in St. Louis. So, can I switch jobs while I'm on a J-1 waiver? This is a good question. So it's really important that you find and secure a quality job, because getting out of a J-1 waiver job is pretty difficult. They will essentially have you, what is the term, Melissa, that you have to provide?
Sorry, say that again. I was answering another question in chat.
Switching jobs, how do you prove that you need to switch on a J-1?
Oh, they call it extenuating circumstances. And so, yeah, that it could, I would recommend going online and looking up that phrase, like it's a J-1 transfer. What are the extenuating circumstances? And you should be able to find those online.
Yeah, it's not always easy to get out of those jobs. So definitely want to make sure you get into a good situation. Let's see. Are there rules drastically different for primary care and specialty ones? It's not really their rules that are different. It's just that primary care is prioritized over specialists. So there are typically more spots for primary care, and the search is a little bit easier for primary care than it is for a specialty. But again, plenty of specialists. We mostly work with specialists, and we never have problems getting waivers for them. So, let's see.
Applying late, I would maybe look at this map that we have up now. The states that are blue, those are going to be probably some of your best options for applying late to get a waiver job. Those are the states that we're focusing on right now for any J-1 2021s that we still have. Question about, can you leave the country after you graduate from fellowship? I think we kind of hit on that a little bit earlier. So from the time you graduate, you have 30 days before you have to leave the country. As far as leaving the country and coming back, that's probably something I would advise you to talk to your immigration attorney about, especially given this last year. There's a lot of extenuating circumstances there. Again, the primary care would be family medicine, internal, pediatrics, OB, and psych. When is the latest you recommend signing a contract in a state like Oregon? So it really, I mean, that's just, we can tell you how long it could potentially take to process a waiver. Some people still might, sign a contract in Oregon this month, and it's still going to take the time frame to process. So you may just have to return to your home country for a little bit. So if that's something that you are willing to do and that you can do, then there isn't really a limit in those regards, I guess.
Assuming you want to start on time and you don't want to go back to your home country, you should try to sign a contract at least 6 months prior to your graduation.
Yeah.
Would be a good rule.
Mm-hmm.
Is that everyone, I think?
We might have missed a couple, but I think that.
How soon after graduation do you need to start on a waiver? Can you get a small break between graduation and starting the job?
Probably really just the 30 days, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are exceptions if you take your boards later. So you can stay in the country if you are taking your boards late, and that would be a way to have like a gap. But other than that, you would have to go home.
Yeah. This was recorded, and we are happy to share this with you guys. Yes.
Okay, I think that is all. So what we'll do is I'll share in the chat a link to our calendars. And again, if you want a more personalized, consultation and asking questions about your specific case, you can email this info@Resolve, and then you can also book a time on this calendar. And these consults are usually 30 minutes, and we can talk to you about not only your specific use case, but also how we help people all the time. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. Actually, where is the chat? We can put that in the follow-up email that you guys will get, thanking you for participating, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will do that. So yeah, thank you guys for your time and wonderful questions. Those were all really good. So hopefully this was helpful, and we'll try to do a couple more of these in the future. I know there's just so many different scenarios and questions. So don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We have other people just like Melissa and I that can answer all these important questions to help you navigate the process. So hope this was helpful, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.